What happens when a digital world dies? When platforms vanish? Do our memories go with them?
We built our lives online, photos, chats, stories. But the internet was never promised forever.
Now, technologists are racing to preserve our digital souls. But is a reboot even possible? This isn't science fiction. It's your browser history, your cloud, your legacy. Ready to explore the afterlife of the internet?
Imagine a world where the internet just disappears. Or maybe it's still there, but it's changed subtly into something you barely recognize. Welcome to this deep dive. We're going to unpack a whole stack of information today, articles, research notes, really get into the most important insights about where the internet is now, where it might be heading, and, well, our pretty complex relationship with it all.
Yeah. Our mission here is really to guide you through some maybe surprising facts, some crucial context. We want to help you get truly well informed about something that, let's face it, touches every single part of our lives, how we think, even how we prepare for, the unexpected.
Okay, let's jump right in. There's a pretty stark question that came up in the sources. What actually happens if some rogue actor, maybe a nation state, maybe someone else, destabilizes or just cuts off our internet access? The potential for, well, mass chaos, even a financial meltdown, it seems incredibly real.
Oh, it absolutely is. And the threats that the sources highlight, they're really diverse. It's not just one thing. You've got rogue actors, cyber attacks. I mean, there are serious concerns about countries like, say, China or Russia disrupting the internet, perhaps during a conflict. We've seen reports from US officials, industry security folks too, saying that hackers, allegedly from China's People's Liberation Army, have actually burrowed into critical American infrastructure.
Really? Like, what kind of infrastructure?
Yeah. Things like a water utility in Hawaii,
Yeah.
a West Coast port, gas and oil pipelines. They even apparently tried to get into the Texas power grid. It's pretty serious stuff.
Wow. So it's not just theoretical then?
Not at all. And, after some recent cyber attacks on big companies like AT&T and Verizon, the FBI actually came out and recommended using encrypted messaging apps, basically to protect your communications from potentially being intercepted by foreign powers. The core message is, well, it's pretty sobering. It's basically, the internet is not safe. We should not depend on technology that we cannot control.
That's unsettling, especially that last part. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the deliberate disruption side.
Yeah.
But you mentioned other threats. What else could, bring the internet down?
Well, the sources also warn about these things called black swan events. Think massive natural disasters, but for the internet specifically, solar superstorms.
Solar superstorms, like from the sun?
Exactly. CMEs, coronal mass ejections, huge bursts of solar wind, and magnetic fields shooting out from the sun. If a really big one hits Earth just right, well, it could cause massive, widespread internet outages.
Across the globe?
Across the globe, yeah, and potentially lasting for months, not just hours or days. Months.
Okay. But hang on. We always hear the internet is resilient, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's this massively vast and decentralized network. It's got redundancies. Isn't that supposed to protect it? How vulnerable is it really?
That's the key question, isn't it? Because yes, there is redundancy. It is decentralized to a degree, but there are still critical weak points. Especially when you talk about these solar storms. For one thing, geographically, a lot of the core internet infrastructure, the cables, the data centers, it's concentrated at higher latitudes.
Okay, why does that matter?
Because those higher latitudes are more susceptible to the geomagnetic effects from solar events. The Earth's magnetic field channels this energy towards the poles, basically. And here's the really specific vulnerability, the submarine cables. The ones carrying almost all the data between continents.
Right, the ones under the ocean.
Yeah. They are at a significantly higher risk than the cables on land. Think about it. They're incredibly long, and seawater is highly conductive. This makes them much more vulnerable to what are called GICs, geomagnetically induced currents, basically huge electrical surges caused by the solar storm interacting with Earth's magnetic field.
So these surges could fry the cables or parts of them?
Exactly. Or more likely the repeaters along the cables, the devices that boost the signal. The sources suggest that even if only 1% of these repeaters fail.
Only 1%? That doesn't sound like much.
Right. But because of the way these networks are interconnected, a 1% repeater failure rate could actually lead to nearly 15% of submarine cables failing. And in really catastrophic scenarios, maybe up to 80% could be affected. Imagine 80% of those connections just gone. An equal fraction of places wouldn't be reachable.
Wow. So entire regions could just be cut off from each other. Are some places more at risk?
Yeah. The sources actually point fingers. The US is identified as highly vulnerable, a high risk of being disconnected from Europe during one of these extreme solar events. Interestingly, connections within Europe seem a bit more resilient. But Chinese cities, they're apparently more prone to lose connectivity than, say, Indian cities. That's down to relying on longer cable routes.
Huh. And what about other regions?
Connections from South America to Europe and Africa seem surprisingly more likely to stay up. And there's a little detail about data centers. Google's apparently have a better geographical spread for resilience compared to Facebook's, which are more concentrated and thus more vulnerable.
Okay. But the basic Internet directory, the DNS root servers?
Oh, those are highly distributed, generally thought to be not at risk, which is, well, some good news in all this. So it's not like the entire Internet would vanish everywhere simultaneously, but you could see massive localized or regional disconnections, which would still be devastating.
Absolutely devastating. Okay. Let's bring this down to a personal level. What does this all mean for you listening right now? If the internet goes down, even just for a day, what's the core takeaway about getting ready?
Yeah. And the sources emphasize this isn't about, panic or fear-mongering. It's framed more as common sense preparedness. It's about rethinking how much we just automatically rely on digital stuff for everything. It's about building a more resilient, maybe more analog self. One that can function okay, whether the internet's on or off.
Okay, like what specifically?
Well, simple things really. Regularly unplugging. Making digital detox a normal practice, not just a weird one-off thing. Actively building your local real-world community. Knowing your neighbors. Having people you can rely on nearby.
That makes sense. What else?
Old-school communication. Maybe invest in some walkie-talkies, or even look into ham radio. And this one might feel humbling, relearning how to use paper maps, atlases, a compass. Can you actually navigate without Google Maps?
Oof, good question. I probably couldn't reliably.
Right. And practical stuff too. Physical copies of critical documents, birth certificates, medical records, insurance papers. Keep them somewhere safe, like a fireproof, waterproof lockbox. Maybe build a little resource library, physical cookbooks, how-to guides for basic repairs or skills. You could also download your favorite online resources to offline storage, like an external hard drive.
Okay, like guides for gardening or first aid.
Exactly. And find hobbies that don't need a screen. Reading physical books, sewing, woodworking, gardening, whatever. Things that bring you joy offline. Also, get used to cooking at home more. Prepare for a world without Grubhub or Uber Eats, just a click away. Maybe stock up a bit more on non-perishable food, just in case supply chains get disrupted.
Right, because if the internet's down, logistics could get messy fast.
Very messy. And think about news. How would you get information? A battery-powered or hand-crank weather radio. Maybe even a standard TV antenna for over-the-air broadcasts, if those are still running. And maybe the most important habit, constantly ask yourself, how would I do XYZ without the internet? And teach your kids to think that way too. It's really about self-reliance and just being less dependent.
That's really practical, actually. It feels less like doomsday prepping and more like just being generally capable.
That's exactly the idea behind common sense preparedness.
Okay. So that covers how the internet might physically break. But there's this other angle, maybe even weirder. What if the internet itself isn't quite what we think it is? What if a huge chunk of it isn't even human anymore?
Ah, right. That brings us to the dead internet theory.
Okay, dead internet theory.
Yeah.
Sounds ominous. What's the core idea?
The core claim is basically this. Sometime around 2016 or 2017, the internet fundamentally shifted. The theory asserts that now the majority of online activity isn't organic human interaction anymore. Instead, it's dominated by bots and automatically generated content, all manipulated by algorithms.
Manipulated for what purpose?
Well, proponents of the theory suggest it's done to control the population, shape opinions, and minimize genuine human expression online. They believe these bots were created intentionally, maybe by companies to manipulate algorithms and boost search results to sell stuff. Some even go further and accuse government agencies of using bots to manipulate public perception, sway elections, things like that.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
That's a big claim. What makes people believe this? Is there any evidence, or is it just a feeling?
Well, that's what makes it interesting. It's not just a feeling for many people. They point to specific things you can actually observe, or at least quantify to some extent. Things like massive amounts of bot traffic, which cybersecurity firms do track, or weird phenomena like seeing tons of different Twitter accounts posting the exact same slightly odd message, like, "I hate texting."
Yeah, I think I've seen stuff like that.
Right. Or the rise of purely virtual influencers on platforms like TikTok being pitched to advertisers, just like real people. Then there's the whole issue of fake views on YouTube. It got so bad, apparently, that engineers there coined a term, the inversion.
The inversion? What's that?
It's the fear that their algorithms might get so confused by the fake traffic that they start misclassifying real human views as fake.
That's kind of mind-bending.
It is. And you even see apps like Social AI, which are designed purely for people to chat with AI bots, not other humans. These get folded into the dead internet narrative too. Now, to be clear, the mainstream academic literature doesn't really support the full-blown theory that the entire internet is dead or fake. But the idea, it's definitely being widely discussed in online communities, on Twitter, YouTube forums, Reddit, TikTok. People are noticing something feels off.
Huh. That is fascinating. And yeah, a bit unsettling. So the insight here isn't necessarily that the internet is dead, but that our online experience might be way less human than we assume. It makes you question, what's real online? Who am I actually interacting with?
Exactly. It forces a kind of critical look at the authenticity of everything online.
Okay, so beyond what the internet is becoming, how is it changing us, our minds? Let's unpack that a bit. This constant screen time, this fire hose of information, how's it affecting our ability to think, maybe think deeply?
Right. This leads us straight into that famous debate sparked by Nicholas Carr back in 2008, with his Atlantic essay titled, "Is Google Making Us Stupid?"
I remember that piece. Caused quite a stir.
It really did. Carr's basic argument was that the sheer ease of clicking and searching online, that constant skimming and jumping between links, might actually be eroding his ability to concentrate deeply. He felt he was losing the capacity for that sustained quiet focus you get from reading a printed book. He worried we were expanding our short-term memory maybe, but at the cost of our long-term memory kind of atrophying.
Losing depth for speed, essentially.
Kind of, yeah. He worried our intelligence might become more machine-like, more shallow, less human, because we're constantly relying on the machine to remember and process for us.
But there was pushback against that idea, wasn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Lots of experts argued the opposite, that the internet and tools like Google are actually making us smarter. Their argument is that by offloading the grunt work of remembering basic facts onto Google, we free up our cognitive resources. Our brain power can then be used for higher-level stuff, like integrating information, evaluating sources, solving complex problems.
So we're outsourcing the memory, but upgrading the analysis.
That's the idea. Access to all this information means we can answer questions in seconds that, a couple of decades ago, we probably wouldn't have even bothered to ask because finding the answer would have been too hard or time-consuming.
Okay, so two very different views. What does the actual research say? Is Google making us stupid or smarter?
Well, the research paints, as usual, a more nuanced picture. There was a study from University College London that found students' research habits online did tend towards more skimming and scanning power browsing rather than deep traditional reading. So that supports Carr's point a bit.
Okay.
But then there was another study from UCLA looking at older adults age 55 to 76. They found that while just reading a book and searching the web used similar brain regions related to language and memory, the web searching actually stimulated additional areas of the brain, specifically areas involved in decision-making and complex reasoning.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and among the people who were already experienced web users, this extra brain activity was twice as high.
So the brain is adapting.
It seems like it. It suggests our neural circuitry can change, and maybe even beneficially, in response to using the internet. There's even work being done with neuroplasticity-based software, showing promise in improving cognitive function. So the surprising insight isn't a simple yes or no. The internet isn't necessarily making us stupid, but it is changing how we think. And potentially for certain kinds of tasks involving quick information retrieval and complex decision-making, it might actually be making us more adept.
That makes sense. It changes the shape of our intelligence, maybe, which leads to another kind of paradox. If having access to more information can be good, why do we often feel so overwhelmed by it all? It feels counterintuitive, but why do we sometimes just shut down and stop taking in information when there's so much available?
Yeah, that's a really fascinating area. Research on information overload and what they call metacognitive decisions, basically. Our brain's own judgment about how well it's learning gives us some clues.
Metacognitive decisions.
Right.
Like my brain telling me, okay, that's enough.
Exactly. Studies consistently show that when people are faced with a lot of information, say a long list of words to memorize, they reach a point where they make a judgment, a metacognitive judgment, to stop receiving more info. And here's the kicker. They do this with the intention of maximizing how much they remember. They think stopping will help them consolidate what they've learned.
Okay, that sounds logical.
It sounds logical, but the research shows this naive belief is actually counterproductive. The participants who decided to stop earlier, they actually remembered fewer words than those who kept going longer.
Wait, really? So stopping early hurts memory? Why would we do that then?
The theory is that people often perceive their rate of learning as slowing down as they go through a long list. They feel like they're hitting diminishing returns, and it's the subjective feeling that prompts them to stop, even though objectively taking in more information, even if it feels harder, would actually improve their overall recall.
So our own internal "I've had enough" filter can actually sabotage our learning when there's a lot to learn.
That seems to be the surprising insight, yeah. Our intuition about when to stop learning, especially with large amounts of info, might actually be wrong. It's a weird quirk of how we manage cognitive load.
Okay, if we pull back and connect all these threads, the fragility, the potential fakeness, the way it changes our thinking, it feels like the internet has really strayed from its original vision, hasn't it? That early dream of a decentralized open space.
Oh, absolutely. It's a very different beast now. Those idealistic early days, the vision was very much about, democratizing information, giving power to the individual, the end user. But where we are today, well, economic power, and therefore a lot of control, is increasingly centralized. It's in the hands of just a few giant companies.
The usual suspects.
Pretty much. And in the US at least, they operate with relatively scant government oversight, which is a stark contrast to somewhere like China, where the oversight is incredibly strict. This whole shift has led to what scholars like Shoshana Zuboff call surveillance capitalism. These huge platforms basically track and collect unbelievable amounts of personal data, and that data is the product.
Right? If you're not paying, you're the product.
That's the core idea, and it gets potentially darker. There's research, like a paper by John Tirole, describing how governments, or even the private platforms themselves, can use all this data for social control.
Social control, how does that work?
Well, Tirole outlines a couple of techniques. One is bundling. This means linking different kinds of information about you together, maybe linking your record of pro-social conduct, like paying bills on time, volunteering with your political, organizational, or religious attitudes.
Uh-oh, give me an example.
The paper mentions Booking.com bundling data about whether a hotel pays its fees on time with that hotel's customer ratings. You can see how that could be applied to individuals linking your social credit score, if you will, to your political leanings or who you associate with.
Okay, that's creepy. What else?
Another technique is guilt by association. This involves basically tainting your reputation if your social network, your social graph, includes connections to people who are somehow blacklisted.
So who your friends are online could hurt your reputation, even if you've done nothing wrong yourself.
Potentially, yes. It creates social pressure, encourages ostracism, makes people careful about who they associate with, even online. And the research suggests these methods are most effective in societies where people have lots of weak ties, many acquaintances rather than deep relationships, and where the population is generally politically docile. It acts as a kind of soft control, boosting the state's or platform's enforcement power without needing, brute force.
That paints a pretty dystopian picture, a far cry from the decentralized utopia, which naturally brings us to Web 3. That was supposed to be the answer, right? The return to decentralization. So the big question from the sources is Web 3 really the future we're hoping for, or is it something else?
Yeah, Web 3, the sources we looked at offer a, let's say, predominantly critical perspective on it.
Okay, lay it on me.
Well, many people cited just dismiss it outright as an empty marketing term, or maybe a concept that kind of flamed out in 2022. Most of the specific pitches for Web3 applications, like replacing mortgages or Ticketmaster with blockchain systems, are described as elaborate fantasies.
Fantasies? Why? Because they're not practical.
Exactly. True decentralization, the critics argue, is just impractical. Most users have no interest in maintaining the complex systems required. And ironically, a lot of supposedly decentralized Web3 projects actually still rely heavily on centralized cloud services, like Amazon Web Services.
So not really decentralized at the core then?
Often not, no. And then there are the fundamental technical problems. Critics highlight issues that they say are quite literally unfixable compared to current systems. The big one is speed, or lack thereof. Terrible speed, low TPS, transactions per second.
That's just too slow.
Way too slow, they argue, to ever realistically power something like a social media network or online game servers. It apparently struggles to even compete with banking systems that are decades old.
Ouch. What about the less technical criticism?
Oh, there are plenty. There's a really strong sentiment in some sources that the whole industry is basically kept afloat by tech criminals building it to steal money from people, and also by the greed of vulture capitalists hoping for a quick buck. NFTs in particular are often singled out as a joke or core to criminal strategy. Any positive buzz about the industry is sometimes seen as just playing into a greater fool scheme, hoping you can sell your crypto or NFT to someone else for more before it all collapses.
That is incredibly harsh.
It is, and there's also the risk of recentralization. Even if you could build a truly decentralized system, critics argue it would probably just re-centralize 10 years from now, but with a new set of powerful players emerging, because someone always ends up becoming a middleman, maybe by hosting content for others who can't or won't run their own nodes.
So the cycle repeats? But is there any value seen in the underlying tech, the blockchain itself, even if Web3 as a whole is overhyped?
That's a fair question. The sources acknowledged that the blockchain itself is fundamentally nothing more than an auditable database. Its actual practical value for many proposed uses is questioned, like recording land deeds on a blockchain. Critics say there is no incentive for anyone to do that because existing government systems, while maybe imperfect, generally work well enough for that specific task. However, to give the other side, some sources do see potential for blockchain technology separate from the whole Web3 marketing buzz, maybe in specific areas, like improving access to basic financial services, like banking, in developing countries where traditional infrastructure is lacking. That's mentioned as a possible positive use case.
Okay, so maybe some niche applications, but not the revolution we were promised?
Yeah, that seems to be the dominant view in these sources, although you do still find some believers,